Penn State fans, the Penn State Minnesota game is it's hours away. It is out like a little more as we record this. Bob Flounders with Max Ralph. As we record this Blue White Breakdown podcast on Thursday, it's a little more than 48 hours away, if my math's correct. Max, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but we're getting close. It's going to be a little chilly out in Minneapolis, but it's cold. It's cold everywhere. It's cold in State College, so
Yep.
I don't think that's going to be an issue. I don't think the weather's going to be an issue. Penn State, the line I've noticed, Max, opened around 2 touchdowns. When I checked late last night, Wednesday night, it was down to 11.5. The people are betting the Gophers. That doesn't mean they're betting them to win, but they think the number's a little high. But let's break this down. I had a chance to write something about James Franklin's news conference after Wednesday's practice. Not really a lot, I think, to get to. He did offer. I will say this though, he did offer some praise for a young corner who I do think is playing very well. Audavian Collins, really fast player. The last 2 games, he's gotten in there. He got in there against Washington when it was a rout. He played. Purdue was also not that competitive. He got in there. When he's on the field, Max, he makes plays. He just missed, I think, an interception once or twice. I think James has noticed him. I'm sure you have noticed him, but it really speaks to the depth of that corner room when you can go 5, 6, maybe even 7 deep, and those guys are making plays.
Yeah, I mean, Collins was one of those guys who, in the offseason, we heard was maybe Penn State's most improved player on the entire roster.
Yes.
So I think we all were actually a little surprised to not be seeing more of him yet this year. But, you know, when he's gotten on the field, you're absolutely right. He's made some plays, clearly has a little bit of ability in space, you know. But there's definitely you can also see there's still a bit of a learning curve coming with him. You know, he's given up a couple of big plays here and there that I can remember off the top of my head. But a talented guy who's really got a ton of athleticism that is going to play well in Terry Smith's cornerback room in the future. But yeah, Bob, this Minnesota game, you know, I mean, if you want to be technical, Christmas is only hours away too. But
you can put a number on it. It's just a really big number.
That's right. I mean,
I think Thanksgiving's closer in hours away to probably put that in perspective.
I'm pretty sure you're right on that one. Might have to do the math, but anyway, no, it's going to be a fun one this weekend. You know, I just keep saying this is not a team to overlook by any means, because you look at the record. If you're really just scoreboard watching, they're 6-4. They probably should be 8-2 this year, and if they're 8-2, they're probably in the top 25 and maybe even like top 20. They're a good team this year. They went toe-to-toe with Michigan before things kind of collapsed over there in Ann Arbor. You know, they lost at home to Iowa, which Iowa's been a weird team this year.
Very weird, correct.
Yeah. And the North Carolina game to open the year, they had a chance to win it, but like it's week 1. Everybody kind of has everybody has weird mishaps in week 1 usually. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one. I know Bob, you and Johnny will be there. I will not, but I'm going to watch it on the TV, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah, Minnesota is a team that you have to really look close when you look at their record, because what you said is right. But on the other hand, so they also could have easily lost to USC, even though, I mean, I think they won by a touchdown. USC had them in trouble. I watched the fourth quarter of that game. But they had that 4-game winning streak. They won out at UCLA, which I don't think when they beat them. I mean, UCLA's not bad right now. That's not necessarily an easy thing to do. They won at Illinois, right? They won at Illinois, another team that when, you know, Penn State played them, it was a close game for about 30 minutes at Illinois. To win that game, I think, is speaks to how well coached and how well prepared Minnesota is. They do have some athletes, but I think my takeaway when I listened to PJ Fleck's news conference on Monday, and then I looked at their scores and did some research, is for Minnesota to win almost against any team, they have to play a specific style and brand of football. And if they do, if they can do what they do best, and they do a couple things really well. If they can
Mhm.
do some things really well against Penn State is going to have their hands full. Where Minnesota, I think, gets where they get in trouble is when their script, when they have to go off their script, they can struggle. Like whether it was the Iowa game or some other games. But I do think there is definitely a path for Minnesota to not only really give Penn State a good game, they can really threaten to win the game. But I just think that it's kind of a narrow path.
Yeah. I think Drew Aller said it best when we were talking to him on Wednesday this week. He said, "Look, Minnesota's a team that's pretty similar to us in the way they're built. They want to control the ball, avoid big mistakes,
Right.
ground and pound, and make the big plays when they're there, but they're not necessarily seeking them out at all times.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you see when you put on the Minnesota tape. They are a ground and pound team, really good running back, big, bulky offensive line. They always have. I feel like
Hmm.
for whatever reason, Minnesota always has huge dudes on their offensive line. Just what it is. But in their defense is a little bit bend don't break, in my opinion, from
Hmm.
what I've seen. You
Yeah.
know, I know we're going to talk a lot about the interceptions and the turnover ratio because
Hmm.
that's frankly been a huge part of Minnesota's record this year. But they just play so much zone coverage, and a lot
Hmm.
of it is soft zone. So there are going to be big plays out there for Penn State through the air. But when you play that soft zone, that really is kind of the bend don't break idea.
Yeah.
Get it into the red zone and then kind of buckle in and not allow touchdowns, just give up field goals, or before you get into the red zone, make
Yeah.
those underneath, jump a route, whatever. That's kind of the idea here for
Hmm.
Minnesota, and so there's a path. It's the big plays in the passing game on defense, making an interception to Drew Aller if he
Yeah.
makes a mistake, and it's ground and pound up front, which you know is fairly similar to what Illinois tried to do against Penn State, but
Hmm.
you know I'm not sure that the Nittany Lions are really susceptible to a team that wants to just out physical them on defense.
Yeah. Yeah. Couple things that I'm wondering as we get into this matchup. So Minnesota, I don't think they've seen very many good quarterbacks this year, but that's a Big Ten thing largely, right? The Big Ten,
Mhm.
if you look at the quarterbacks, there's 18 teams now. We've seen some allegedly good teams, and I don't know that anyone has really knocked my socks off. Um, even Will Howard at Ohio State he's a college quarterback. He's not an NFL quarterback. He can make plays with his arm. He can make plays with his leg, but he could also make bad mistakes. And all of that showed up when Penn State played Ohio State. When Minnesota beat USC, they came from behind. And Miller Moss has some talent, but he had a couple of interceptions in that game
Mhm.
and turnovers, I think, in that game. And so my question is, so the Gophers have kind of feasted on turnovers. I think it's 16 interceptions. You wonder about Drew in this game and whether or not how many opportunities he's going to give Minnesota's defense. Yes, he had 3 interceptions in the USC game. You and I watched it. The first two, he forced the ball. He should not have forced the ball into tight coverage. He paid for it. The third one was a desperation heave. It was
Mhm.
really 2 interceptions, but I think Drew has just learned from that. I think he experienced it. I think he knows what he's up against. And if Minnesota is going to play, Max, if Minnesota is going to play soft zone consistently against Penn State, they are going to get destroyed by Tyler Warren. I don't know if there's a tight
Mhm.
end that is better in finding soft spots in zones in the country. First of all, there's probably not a better tight end, period. But if you're not giving extra attention to Tyler Warren, you're in a world of trouble. I really wonder if they're going to mix it up because you cannot play soft zone with Aller's arm and the way Warren can find the ball and catch the ball. It's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, and I think Drew's maturation process and his ability to get through progressions and
Yeah.
everything is really going to be an issue for a team that wants to play zone against him. I mean, if you really just want to if you want to be honest about the state of Penn State's offense right now, they shouldn't struggle with a team that's playing a lot of zone
Right.
because of the scheming that Andy Kotelnicki does, because of Drew's ability to read a defense these days, and because of a guy like Tyler Warren who's so good. If you want to beat Penn State, you got to have the guys on the outside at corner that can match up with Penn State's receivers, who are a big question mark. That's how you beat
That's what
Penn
Ohio
State
State
this
did,
year.
right? That's why Ohio State held him down pretty good, and they got the red zone turnover from Drew. But the guy
That's
made
right.
an unbelievable play, like an
Right.
unbelievable play. Probably should have been a touchdown.
Right, exactly. But that's what that's what I'm getting at is I'm not
Yeah,
sure Minnesota has those guys, and if they're gonna stick to the script and play zone this week, they're probably gonna be in trouble. The other thing that Drew talked about, because I wrote about it on PennLive. You can go read it if you'd like. I know
sure.
Bob, you had something earlier in the week too that mentioned this, but the turnovers are the huge thing. So Drew was asked about it, and he basically said too is that a lot of these Minnesota interceptions haven't necessarily been absurd plays by the defensive backs. They've been caused by the pass rush up front. So,
Mhm.
hitting the quarterback, tip balls at the line of scrimmage, whatever it is. I certainly trust Drew's input on that because the guy's watching film from 6 a.m. every day. he's a morning person, not like me. But I followed up with Anthony Donko too afterward, and I said, Drew mentioned that the D line causes a lot of these momentum changing plays. Have you guys taken note of that? Yeah, he said they did. Minnesota's going to throw a lot of unique pressures at him, a lot of twists, both on the interior and like edge tackle twists. I've seen some stuff on film with linebackers coming and twisting with interior linemen. So as long as Drew is able to help alert those things pre-snap, I think that Penn State's going to be fine this week. But you have to account for the fact that Drew could throw a bad interception in this one and wonder how Penn State comes back from it.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to bring up with you, Max, is from the outside world, there's a lot of people I know that are dismissive of Penn State and who they have played and beaten.
Yeah,
They went toe to toe with Ohio State, and that game hung in the balance
yeah,
for a long time. Um, I do believe, since the game was at Beaver Stadium, I think the better team won, and I think by the end of the game, that last drive where they ran out the clock was very telling. They took it over. But what I want to get to with you, Max, is Penn State is 4-0 on the road, and I know beating Purdue on the road is nothing really to get super excited about.
yeah,
But Oregon just struggled at Wisconsin. It was a game that could have gone either way. Penn State won on the road, held them to 13 points with their backup quarterback in the second half. I think that West Virginia game, you and I watched them. After the first quarter, it was
yeah,
not a very competitive
yeah,
game. Penn State, but the game to me that I think if you're Penn State, you could hang your hat on, and the coaching staff and the players was they dug themselves a huge hole against a desperate USC team on the road, down 20 to
yep.
6, and they were able to come back. And in the second half on offense, I mean, it was a tough go for USC to really keep up with them. And the reason I bring that up is even in a world, Max, where the breaks go Minnesota's way early in the game and say they get up 10 points or whatever it is, the fact that Penn State's unbeaten on the road and the fact that they had to do what they did against USC and also with their backup quarterback at Wisconsin, they were down 10-7 at half when Bo came in. I think this team has the confidence and the resolve to say, look, we're not going to get rattled. This is not a typical situation. We're not playing Ohio State. I think they can come back. If things do not go their way early, I think Penn State is still comfortable. But if Minnesota gets down early against Penn State's depth, especially on defense, I don't think that's the case. So to me, that's going to be what I'm kind of watching. If Penn State gets up early, it's going to be really, really hard for the
Yeah.
Gophers to come back. This is not the USC team that they were able to rally. And I do think Penn State, their defense is going to be geared up to stop the running back. And he's had some games where, as talented as he is, he's gotten nowhere fast on the ground. And they need him as a runner and a receiver to have a really nice day.
I'm in total agreement. It's a tale as old as time. I know I've said it on our podcast with you, Bob. But James Franklin coached teams absolutely take care of the games that they're supposed to and have over the past 4 or 5 years. If you take out the 2 seasons that are
Yeah,
weirdly marred by COVID, I mean, 2021 and 2020, 21 was a little bit more of a letdown, but
sure.
it's how it's been in recent history. I don't see any reason why it would change this weekend, barring a huge momentum swinging couple of plays from Minnesota. You brought up some things that I wanted to hit on. I think you mentioned the quarterbacks at the top of the podcast. If Wisconsin has anybody other than Braden Locke, they're winning that game against Oregon. I
Yeah.
mean, sorry if you see this, Braden, but like it was
Sorry, not sorry, Braden.
it was a tough watch seeing
Yeah,
him go against Penn State's defense
it
in
was.
Camp Randall. Um, yeah, and the other thing about Minnesota's running game, the way that I think Penn State matches up well here is that if you look at the USC game where Penn State was gashed on the ground, the
Yeah,
Trojans were able to get Woody Marks out in space and do a lot of things, forcing Penn State's defense to move laterally, especially that thin linebacking core. You know, once you get beyond Kobe King, Tony Rojas has had his ups and downs this year, but he is an athletic linebacker that Penn State doesn't necessarily have behind him.
hmm,
Kobe's great. Tony's still got some room to grow. Dom DeLuca is kind of middle of the road right there. Kind of know what you're getting with him. But USC did a great job of moving those guys laterally to allow Marks to get open space and get huge holes. I
yeah,
just don't think that Minnesota has the speed on offense to be
hmm,
able to attack Penn State in that way. I think that they're going to have to try and win in the trenches, and I'm not really sure that they're going to be able to do that. Darius Taylor's a good back.
yeah,
Minnesota seems like I said, always have huge offensive linemen, have some good running backs. I remember, that whiteout at Penn State in 22 where Mo Ibrahim was there. I mean, I think he's got like all their records over
yeah.
at Minnesota for a running back, and he was pretty much silenced against Penn State. So I just think that the makeup of these two teams really lands in favor of Penn State. Which, I mean, obviously that makes sense for the number 4 team against a 6-4 team, but like just from more of a scheme perspective and the things that Penn State specifically does well, I think that this is setting up to be a comfortable game for Penn State, barring anything crazy.
Yeah, and the other thing is, as good as I really do like Minnesota's running back Taylor. He is
Yeah.
a when he gets going and gets in rhythm and he can push the pile and he can get some yards after contact. That is what they want to do, and they can be tough. But when you look at their stats, they're averaging less than 4 yards a carry. They're averaging just over 100 yards per game because when they do face a good defense who knows what they're schemed well and they're good up front, he's really had UCLA did a number on him. He's really had some issues in a lot of ways. Max, I wonder if he's actually more of a problem in the passing game sometimes, because sometimes he gets ahead of steam and he gets a clear path to the line of scrimmage, and then he's as big or bigger than the player that's trying to bring him down. And that's maybe, if you're Penn State, you're probably just as wary of that. I think Penn State's safeties, especially Jalen, I know I always mention this, but I think their
Mhm.
safeties in this game, I know they have a good receiver, Minnesota does, but I think Penn State's corners are good enough I mean, there's nothing they haven't really seen before. Like,
Right.
they've seen better receivers than this kid. I think the safeties are going to be bird dogging. You're welcome for that word, Max. They're going to be bird dogging this running back, whether it's against the run or against the pass. That it's something I'm going to be watching for. But I do want to say this: when I watched PJ Fleck's news conference, and he was asked about Tyler Warren early in the news conference, he said absolutely everything else that everyone else said. But then I thought it was very revealing. Then he talked about just what the problem is with dealing with Penn State's offense overall. And it's Andy Kotelnicki's schemes. It
Yeah.
really is. He's like, and I could tell this was not him blowing smoke.
Yeah.
He said, "Look, they're going to give you at least one new look and several different plays that you had not seen before in the game, and you had better be ready to stop it and he was really worried about the variety, the innovation, and the in-game adjustments that Penn State can do in a game and involve a lot of different players. He's talked about three quarterbacks. He talked, where Warren's one of the quarterbacks. He talked about, he didn't mention Venga in motion cracking on a defensive end, but I'm sure that's got his attention. The running backs, Nick Singleton as a receiver, Katron Allen between the tackles. I could tell he is extremely concerned about that. I think that PJ knows that they can't get behind in this game by double digits because it's going to take a lot. And I just wanted to say this: I've been tracking the big plays, 20 yards or more in Penn State's offense since like week 2, and it is getting to be a task because they have a lot of them, like a lot of them. I have all of their explosive plays, 20 or more yards, and I have all their runs and passes between 15 and 19 yards on PennLive as we speak. But I just wanted to say, so Penn State's offense in 2013, in 13 games, they had 47 true chunk plays, 20 or more yards. After what Penn State did against Purdue, they had 8 of those plays. They now have 50. So they've already exceeded last year's total. They're probably well on their way. If you think they're going to play 13 games at least, I mean, they're probably going to be in the mid-60s or more, depending on how Maryland plays against them. But it kind of speaks to what Kotelnicki has been able to do with fantastic athletes. I think Flex sees it on tape, and I think he is super duper worried.
Yeah. Is Dante Cephas coming back for the Maryland game next week? Because then it might be
Max.
Then it might be a lot more.
If Dante Cephas makes an appearance for the Maryland game, I don't think Joe Herman's going to be very happy. I'm just going to say that. If you know, Joe might have some things to say to Dante. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but let's hope we don't see that reunion.
No. Anyway, it does make you wonder because opposing coaches are absolutely concerned for good reason about what Tyler Warren, Andy Kotelnicki, even Drew Aller's, comfortability in running this scheme. Yep. They're concerned for a good reason. I mean, Penn State has shown what it has, and it's good. The offense is good. I mean, a lot of people are going to go look at that Ohio State game and rightfully complain. That was a bad showing, but it's just really, I mean, it goes back to they don't necessarily have somebody that can threaten you down the field. And you really wonder where Penn State would be if they had that. And but yeah, like especially a team that's not Ohio State that has the best athletes in the country.
Caleb Downs, they don't have Caleb Downs, so that's the young safety's good. He's not Caleb Downs,
right? Coy Parrish is a great player. I pray for Minnesota fans that the transfer portal money doesn't get to him because he is good. But and I'm pretty sure he's a Minnesota kid, so that might be off the table for him. Whatever. But he's a good player. He's not Caleb Downs. When you're not playing Ohio State, I really like this Penn State offense. I think they've proven it time and time again this season for a lot of reasons. Like it really is. It comes down to like these receivers are good enough to beat up on teams that are of equal competition. They're not good enough to beat a team that is Ohio State level, that is like on the breaking point for Penn State. That's been what it's been for all season, all of last season, truthfully. But the offense is significantly better this year. That's how I see it. I think PJ Fleck knows exactly what you're talking about, Bob. It's been I already used the phrase. It's a tale as old as time with Penn State right now.
It is, and you're not even that old, and you're aware of a tale of as old as time, which to me is impressive. I feel like I should have said that, but you already know it. So kudos to you, Max.
I'm wise beyond my years, Bob.
All right. Okay. All right. No, you are. You definitely are. Max, so we have had this running thing going on for a couple of weeks now about our game predictions. And Penn State fans, if you're listening to this on the Blue White Breakdown or you're watching it, you could see me with the trepidation. So Max and I we tend to see things pretty similarly. I don't think that's an exaggeration. And ever since I think whatever the game was early that we were exact in our thoughts.
I think it was UCLA.
I wanted to I try and go way out of my way to pick a little bit of a funky score because I think twice we've had the exact same score. And Max was talking before, and we came perilously close to doing it a third time. But when we're going to give our scores, and I have a specific bold prediction because last week I finally got one right for the first time in about 1,100 years. I said Luke Reynolds is going to find the end zone, and naturally I'm going to shout myself out, even though the previous 55 times I've fallen short. But I do have a bold prediction. But Max, let's get to your score and your reasoning.
Sure. I'd pat you on the back for the Luke Reynolds call if I could. I'll do it through the podcast here. But I'm as we've talked about the whole podcast, I think this one's fairly comfortable for Penn State. I think you do the same thing, but I like to look at the betting line and the over under when I'm making my pick here. I like Penn State to cover, and I like the game to hit the under because I think
like 45.
45 and a half, yeah. And so, when I made my pick, it was 12 and a half in favor of
There's
Penn
a lot
State.
of degenerate gamblers, and I mean this, Penn State fans, in the best possible way. But some of you are degenerates, and they are probably listening specifically for this reason. Keep going.
Yeah, so I like the under to hit because of what Minnesota wants to do. That they're going to want to muck it up, similar to what Illinois tried to do earlier this year. And like we said, Illinois game was really never in doubt for Penn State, especially after after halftime. So I think it's going to be a comfortable win. I think that it's going to be 31-13 Penn State. I do think that, we didn't even talk about Max Brosmer yet, the Minnesota quarterback. I think he's a solid player. I don't think he's
the Maxes in the world have to stick up for each other, or else it's a loss.
Right. That's right. I've given the guy some love, but I do think he's a solid player. He's shown some stuff on tape this year that's impressive. He's not necessarily like a top 5 guy in the Big Ten even, but I do think that although with Big Ten competition, he might be. He's not an all-star. Let's put it that way. He's not an All-American, but like
New Hampshire transfer, right, Max?
That's right. New Hampshire. That's right. He's a good player. I think that he'll lead a few scoring drives. I do. But all in all, I think it's a comfortable Penn State win. I don't think Drew Aller will turn the ball over. I just think he's so comfortable. I asked him about his pre-snap improvement this year, and he agreed with me. It's one of his biggest areas of improvement this season. And my bold prediction that my don't be surprised if over on PennLive. It's not bold at all. I said Tyler Warren scores 2 or more touchdowns again this week. Yeah. And I literally wrote, I'm like, I know it's not a hot take, but Penn State is trying as hard as it can to get that guy in New York for the Heisman. Yeah. Why? He's gonna do it again. That's my take. 31-13.
Guy couldn't make the Biletnikoff semifinal list, but he could probably end up going. He could literally go to New York, but they couldn't. That's a story for another day. I think that just rankles me. But Max, so I picked 32-13. You picked 31-13, and honestly, we do not look at each other's picks. Everything you say, I agree with. I just want to add a couple of things. Watching deny Dennis Sutton last week against Purdue, and I know it was the Purdue offensive line, but watching him move, watching him look comfortable, and then talking to him after the game. He had a sack early, tone-setting sack, another tackle for loss. Abdul noticed. So now you got Abdul on one side, and now you got Deny, who is who's done a lot to get back, and he wants to show the world who he really is. His season kind of got interrupted by that groin injury, and kudos to him for, I'm sure the discomfort level was as high as it could have been to try and give it a go against Ohio State and Washington. And that could not have been easy, but he is close, and he said it's going to be 100%. So he shows up. Both those guys show up against the run and the pass. So it's not like Minnesota can take them out of the game by running at them. Mm-hmm. Abdul Carter is just playing at a level unbeknownst to many people who have ever played this game. James talked about him. He made a play running down a screen. He was at about Mach 8 and he came across the field to get a really fast receiver before he really got going. And it was like an 11 or 12-yard gain, but it was one of the best plays I've seen all season. Gary Danielson almost lost his mind on the telecast.
Took the words out of my mouth.
Minnesota's got to deal with both those guys, and I just don't know if they get behind what they're going to do. 32-13. One other thing, my bold prediction is, because I think you're right. I think PJ Fleck is so worried about Tyler Warren. I could see them just doing a little sneaky stuff, maybe kind of look-ins and maybe trying to give. If they're not going to play maybe a traditional soft zone on every play, because like otherwise Warren's going to kill him. You just can't do it. So they're gonna change it up. So my bold prediction is Penn State and Kolodnicki are going to catch them when they do it. Harrison Wallace on a post for a touchdown, a long one. Look for it. He did it against West Virginia. I think Kolodnicki's going to bait him. I think they're going to take the cheese, and I expect Harrison Wallace, who's actually really woken up the last couple of weeks, to get loose, specifically on a slant for a touchdown. They're going to catch the free safety. That's my pick. Back to you, Max.
Yeah, Trey's a good receiver. I've talked about this plenty of times. He is a good receiver. Probably has a shot at the next level, just because of his pure athleticism. Yeah. But he's just not necessarily a guy that can like do it on his own, against some of this top competition. So I like the pick. I like Trey a lot. I think he's a good player. The Tyler Warren thing, don't disagree. PJ Fleck is going to have some tricks up his sleeve.
He has to.
I think the best thing you said, Bob, is that we have not seen a healthy Deni Dennis Sutton paired with Abdul playing at his best.
Right.
I mean, if you look at it, I think that Wisconsin game or maybe the week before, was when Abdul kind of really started to come into his own, and he is just he's in a flow state right now. Like there's no better way to describe it. Like he is just absolutely mauling people, getting to the quarterback, and so we haven't
tired. He never gets tired. I don't know what the deal is with this guy. He's like Micah. They just never wear down.
He's absurd, and for that reason, I'm really excited to see a fully or close to fully healthy Deni Dennis Sutton play alongside an Abdul that is doing this. I mean, first couple weeks of the year, Abdul was still kind of figuring it out. You could see he was playing a little bit slow, trying to figure things out in the run game too. It's not the case anymore. He is just flying around, making all kinds of plays, and to see those two healthy together and playing at full speed, I pray for Max Brosmer.
Max has got to stick up for each other. So I will allow you praying for Max, and it's probably a good idea. It should be a really interesting game, guys. Thanks so much for listening. Keep checking back to PennLive for all our stuff, Penn State related, Penn State recruiting related. Shout out Max. Post game coverage. The season's really starting to get interesting. Also, keep an eye on Ohio State, Indiana. It could actually have some influence on Penn State. But if Penn State gets past this game, I got no problem projecting them for sure in the playoff, because I am not worried about Mike Loxley's Terps. They look like they're mailing it in. Max, good talking with you. Any final thoughts?
I'll just say I think Mike Loxley might be worried about his own Terps.
All right, so you just froze up a little bit when I said that. I'm sure your final thought was great, Max.
Great timing.
It's good talking to you, Penn State fans. We'll be back soon to talk more about James Franklin's team.